InfoTrust went from zero, two guys, no clue how to run a business, but we knew how to sell. So within a year we had 100 customers, 2 year 200 customers, 3 years 300 customers. What happened next was even more incredible.
Dane Meah.
Dane Meah.
Dane Meah, CEO and co-founder
of a security SaaS platform business, MyCISO.
You need to divide and conquer, right? This is a big opportunity with MyCISO, but you're not going to do it as a side hobby. Oh, it'll be fine. I've got this disaster. We've got enough on our plate. 3 hours later, I've got a whiteboard the size of the wall, and there's arrows everywhere.
And did that translate to results? Thank you for joining. And just to kick off, would love to start in tell us a little bit about where you are today, what you're doing from a MyCISO perspective, and then I want to reflect back and talk about what were you doing 10 years ago and kind of how that journey has been.
Sure. Yeah. No. Look. Great to be here. Obviously, likewise. It's difficult to miss you. When we first met, equally, it was great to meet you and follow your journey as well, building a successful business. But look, in terms of where I'm at and, the journey that's got me here, you never expect things to end up the way they end up, but, it hasn't been without a lot of hard work. MyCISO has really been a business that's been really a baby and an idea of mine and my co-founder Simon for a long time, nearly 10 years. And I'll come back to kind of how it all started, but shortly into the tenure with InfoTrust, and we were pretty much brand new. Simon and I had come from a software background and in a product background, and I always talk about my time at Symantec, part of their cloud business, the SaaS business, as my MBA, because I was deeply kind of fascinated in every part of the business, be it sales, which is what I was paid to do, but marketing, even collections, the finance aspect, seeing why customers weren't paying in some cases, or partners had lost track of invoicing and subscription billing and things like that. I really enjoyed that aspect of learning about how to run a SaaS business. So I was really passionate about creating a software product when we started InfoTrust. But quickly realized it wasn't as straightforward as I first thought. There's obviously big differences between running a service business, as we were, and a software business. Hence the reason why over time the business is kind of diverged, and MyCISO became its own entity. So, and here we are. But yeah, there's been a lot of other wins and challenges on the journey, which kind of help you grow and become better at what you do, and incrementally.
And I'm excited to tap into a couple of those today. So you mentioned that you were at Symantec and paid as a sales rep, but also just had this passion for other areas of the business as well. And I've been a sales rep and an individual contributor, and I personally wasn't interested in the collection side, or chasing up customers, or looking at kind of behind the scenes. So that's to talk to me a bit about kind of how that came about, and you're not just focusing purely on your number.
I often say to people in the business now, if you ask for my opinion, expect to get an answer, because I've always put my nose into things maybe that I shouldn't, and I've always been quite interested in process improvement. How things can be, problem solving, and how things can be done better. I kind of reflect now more recently at my work experience. At age 12, I was put into a balloon kind of party decoration and supplier business for a week. And no word of a lie, really got my hands dirty transforming that business. Not necessarily on the operational kind of delivery component, but the shop looked completely different by the end of the week, which was kind of indicative of he certainly didn't hire a 12-year-old to come in and relay out his shop. But I kind of just saw that as well. By the way, sir, this is not really laid out the best. I don't think you're getting good visibility on these products and blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of what I've carried on doing throughout my career. And sometimes it gets me into a bit of trouble. My first sales job at the age of, must have been 18, working for a polythene manufacturing company. I remember turning up for my interview, pretty school trousers and a shirt that I'd, a plain shirt that I think my mum had bought me for a wedding or something. I turn up, we do about 15 minutes of the interview, and he said, now, this isn't school anymore, so go and buy a suit and come back. So, deeply embarrassing. Off I went, came back with a suit the next day, £400 poorer, which was probably my life savings at that point. Anyway, I worked in that business, learned a lot over that first month, but, really kind of, as I started to do what I even did at that point, in that case, it got me into trouble. And, that was a short tenured career, but, not through lack of, good intentions. It was more, keeping your head down as well. But that's, like I said, that's just always been something I've done.
And moving on from that, that role, was that a sales role? Mm-hmm. Selling polythene,
plastic.
Yeah. Selling plastic
bags.
Plastic bags. It sounds so fancy the first time. So you went from selling balloons to plastic bags. What was the next step in your career?
Oh dear. So I worked in recruitment because I realised the age of 17 I had quite a bad football injury, which put me into a predicament, frankly. Was about to complete my A-levels, go to university, and had a situation where I had quite a common but serious fractured tib and fib. The injury meant that I couldn't go to university, didn't actually interrupt a lot with my A-levels because it wasn't healing. I started a business at home. So this was really probably my first thing that got me into business, got me trying out new things and ideas, problem solving. And the business that started was really buying and selling online, different things, consumer electronics, apparel. But the genius product was an information product on how to buy and sell consumer electronics and apparel online, which was basically just a few pages, context of supplies. And I would sometimes come home from school and I'd have 50 to 100 pounds in my bank account, and all I had to do was send out a bunch of PDFs, which was, probably still to this day the best margins that I've ever made. But that got me kind of the appetite for sales, the thrill of the chase. And I'd done other jobs in kind of Tesco's and things like that, working on different departments. But I knew I wanted to do sales. So off I went, walking around the town centre of Stevenage in Hertfordshire in England, and finding out who's going to give me a job in sales. Eventually someone said, why don't you come and work for us? You don't have much of a sales career. Can't really count the month, unfortunately, that you had there. But, we can see you've got a bit of gusto about you. Come and work for us. So I did a few years in recruitment, which was, brilliant in terms of learning the, I guess, firstly, work ethic. What's required to be successful. In the case of any sales role, having high activity, that was drilled into me from a young age. Again, I remember one of the sort of early days of getting into recruitment, learning about really starting the day with high levels of activity. So from even sort of 8:30, contacting people that, in those days it might be candidates. It's more convenient before they get into the office to call them. And the same, that would continue on into the evening. So I always had that drilled into me from a young age.
But when you say that was drilled into you at a young age, was that someone else drilling into you, or did you just recognize that was required and you figured that out yourself to get a competitive edge? You needed to put that in.
Yeah, I would say that's a good question. I definitely worked harder than the people around me.
Yeah.
That was always the benchmark, not who's, what's the best look like and match that. It was, how do I do more?
Yeah.
So, I was regularly the first in, the last to leave. And that was just because I had that desire to achieve great results, get ahead. I was younger as well, so, I had more to prove.
And did that translate to results, you working harder?
Yes. I mean, ultimately, in those days, I was a blunt instrument, right? That, didn't necessarily have the contacts, the talk track, things like that, the knowledge of the industry. But what I always say is, having more attempts, having ultimately more practice sharpens that blade really quickly. And there's another story that happened a few years later that kind of, I used that same approach to get ahead. But my next job was in pharmaceutical sales. So I've gone from selling people to selling, not even selling, but consulting to doctors on medical research and, presenting medical studies. Did that for a couple of years. Again, that was interesting. I learned a lot about a number of different disease areas, but wasn't really hadn't found the thing that I really was feeling passionate about.
And just on the note of passion, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you recognized that you wanted to find a role in sales. Different people get into sales for different reasons. What was it about sales that attracted you?
I'd had that experience selling in my little home business, and I'd always, if I go back to a few years before, I'd started little businesses at home. So selling you're generally selling a product or something. So,
and is that the thrill of the chase? Is it that satisfaction when you get I just got a deal?
Yeah, exactly.
Just that euphoria.
Yeah. I think the effort reward formula was the but then tuning your effort, efficiency, being more efficient. That was exciting. And I had this business at home, which was, earning me some pocket money. But I decided, look, if I want to be better, I need to join a business that I can be around people that have been there and done that, I can learn from. And as I said, recruitment, pharmaceuticals, that took me to the age of about 21. And I had this sort of niggling thing where I've wanted to start a business. So in my evenings and spare time, I started a recruitment business. Now, I shouldn't say this to you, but
I did not know that.
So I started a recruitment business called Now Recruit.
Okay.
Right? It's kind of Now Recruit.
So it's what we do, Now Recruit.
So that was the name of the business. Loved the process of setting up the business. Went through all of that kind of preparatory stage, and then started doing it. And then I realized why I'd gotten out of it. I'm not going to say, I just don't think I'm very good at it. Right. I'm kind of, you have to be a certain breed of person to kind of manage so many balls in the air and so many relationships with like the market candidates as well as your clients, and juggling expectations, and lots of things can go wrong. And it was at the sort of ripe old age of 21 where I realized I was having a life crisis. I thought, well, Richard Branson, by the age of 21, he'd already started Virgin, and things were starting to go quite well for him. And here I was looking at a business of one, not enjoying what I did. Didn't enjoy the pharma industry, and we needed a life intervention. So I said to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, we've been happily married for a long time, I'm feeling really sad about where I'm at in life. And she was ready for a change. And almost the next day, we met somebody who said they were moving to Australia. It was like a light bulb moment. What's this? How do you do that? Can you just move? What's the visa situation? And yeah, I guess the rest was history. We booked a one-way flight a week later, and we were on a plane within a couple of months. And what happened next was even more incredible. So we're on our way over. I'll tell you the short version because we only have 3 hours, right, for this interview?
3. Yeah.
Okay. So the abridged version is stopping off in Korea. I walked past an internet computer to check, and I think, well, we've got an hour to burn. Let's check my email. There's an email from my soon-to-be landlord saying, sorry, we found someone better. Best of luck. Now, we're arriving at 5 a.m. on New Year's Day. I've got nowhere to go. So we messaged the one person that we knew and said, hey, do you remember meeting us that time at that party? Anyway, do you know anyone that will take us in tomorrow? And then closed the email. We got the flight. 11 hours later, we land in Sydney on the search for an internet computer. They used to be dotted around in those days. Check my email, go to Milson's Point, Alfred Street. And again, I said I'd give you the short version. Here we go. But that day at the house on New Year's Day, they happened to be having a barbecue. And I met the sales director of Message Labs, which was the company that Symantec acquired. And that was how I got into cybersecurity. I met by complete fluke. And the guy, I was just chatting to him, he happened to be a Palm and an Arsenal fan as well. So we got on quite well. And as he's leaving, he whispers in my ear, send me your CV. And I thought, who's this guy? I thought he was just my mate. But it turns out he had a role for me, and I started a couple of weeks later.
And how old were you at that point?
I was 21.
21. Wow.
Yeah, sorry, 22. Just
22.
turned 22, yeah.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And back to kind of work ethic, that first 3 months, so it didn't go completely to plan. He wanted me in his sales team. The VP of the region said, look, you're a working holiday visa. I'm not putting you in our most successful sales team in the region without a proper visa. So I said, okay. I was probably quite close to saying, screw this. I've been selling for years. I can do, you should have belief.
A highly proficient 22-year-old.
Yeah. So, and then I had a little talk to myself as I was walking up the street up in North Sydney. I said, look, no one's watching. Just keep your head down, work hard, and they'll realize pretty quickly where you should be. So I started off in telemarketing, and I worked, like I said, same work ethic, first in, last to leave, because I saw it as a hack. I was like a little secret hack, which was I can call into New Zealand from 7 a.m. and I can call into Perth up until sort of 7, 8 o'clock at night, depending on the time. Now, I wasn't doing that every day, but quite regularly, I'd be like, right, well, Perth is, after 5 o'clock. Most cold callers are calling from Sydney or Melbourne, but no one's calling at that time. So it's perfect time to call them.
And not a lot of people phone Perth from the East Coast after 5. So
that's my point.
Yeah.
That was So very quickly, the lead target was just being blown out of the water. I really used it. We had good trainings. We learned about spin selling was the foundational kind of learning that I got, which was fantastic. I read a whole bunch of other books. And that was kind of, that was the start of my sales career really, was learning, applying what I learned. I did 4 months in telemarketing and then got the jump into
the call up.
The call up, yeah.
The call up to the quota.
And there was a big kind of dip in the rest of everybody else's sales performance after I left telemarketing because, the leads had dried up, right? But no, I'm joking. But it was, so funnily enough, Simon, who's my business partner, I was his telemarketer.
No way. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So you became a rep, a successful rep. How many years were you working at Symantec as a rep before you jumped out and set up InfoTrust?
So it was about 6.5 years, all up.
And
Yeah.
I guess, so you were there for 6.5 years, and there was a catalyst, I assume, for you saying, hey, now is the time for us to, I see an opportunity of some sort for us to take the leap of faith and do something on our own. Can you talk a little bit about that whole process and experience and what you saw?
Timing is everything, right? When starting a business, there has to be a clear need for what you're offering, in order to make life a bit more comfortable, right? That ideally you've got some favourable circumstances, right, that make for example, having come from an adjacent space where you have a lot of relationships, that's a good leg up. So the kind of journey for me at Symantec was, as I said, working in this subsidiary for the whole 7 years or 6.5 years. Message Labs later rebranded as SaaS business unit and then cloud. The kind of journey went from managing SMB to enterprise, large enterprise, and building a lot of relationships with some really prominent businesses around Australia. I'd realised as a account manager that I had to be constantly reinventing myself, adding value in different ways. Now, with quite a narrow product set, it wasn't always easy, but I always made sure that I remained relevant. So whether I was walking into a tier 1 bank or, major manufacturing companies, all sorts of different businesses, I would generally be able to gain access to whether it be the CISO and that executive team, just through being highly valuable, right? So the way that we did that was being an advisor, providing insights into how they can derive more value from the products that they already had. That was a big focus for me. I had the benefit having the key accounts of having a client service manager and other support, access to the best people in the business. So what had happened with Symantec over the past, incrementally, is they make an acquisition and gradually rip the winning formula apart. No one would be, I don't think you'd find many people that disagree with that. And it was ironic when Broadcom acquired them. But that was starting to happen within our business. But with respect and credit to Brenton Smith, who was the managing director, he was extremely protective of that unit and kept us going to the point where we were still, right up until the day that we were made redundant, which is also incredible, it was the highest performing team in the region. And that it was the winning formula of what's later known as customer success. Obviously, having good products is required. So the catalyst was we could see what had happened in the US and in Europe when they got rid of the cloud team. So no surprise, customers left. Competitors came in and swooped in and said, hey, you're getting the support that you want? How's the product? And we were already under a lot of pressures from other competing solutions. So you step away or you get rid of that team, then, millions of dollars just leaves the business. So that was kind of our moment, which was we started InfoTrust initially, and we made a value proposition to Brenton and said, look, we get it. You have to make our team redundant, row in with the strategy for the rest of the global business. You've held out for 2 years, but it's not going to last forever. So Simon, I wrote first of all, I approached Simon. I said, look, there's a window of opportunity here. We've got 6,000 customers in Australia. We've got new businesses wanting to buy this product and series of products. And all the knowledge about these solutions is leaving Symantec. And the customers are mostly direct are not going to have any support or proactive support. And that was our value proposition to Brenton. We said, look, we can continue to be your rockstar sales team, but working for ourselves. How does that sound? To which he's like, that sounds fantastic. Would love to keep you in the ecosystem. So basically the first year was either approaching customers I had great relationships with who wanted to continue a service, or being brought in by Symantec as the specialist cloud partner, or for new business deals, or where there was a churn customer, really unhappy customer of all sizes, we would get called in to save the account. So it was using that knowledge and IP that we already had built up over many years to kind of grow the business. So InfoTrust went from 0, 2 guys, no clue how to run a business, but we knew how to sell. So within a year, we had 100 customers, 2 year, 200 customers, 3 years, 300 customers.
And initially it was selling like maintenance and support agreements, both kind of reactive and proactive.
Yeah, so we called it the InfoTrust way. And it was a value proposition that was, I'd reverse engineered the buy-in cycle from spin selling, Neil Rackham's buy-in cycle, where traditional or kind of weaker salespeople will engage when a company is reviewing the market, reviewing opportunities. So they call it and say, what are your requirements? Well, we're looking at email security right now. Now that's the worst time to engage, right? Of course, you wouldn't pass it up if it came to you, but you want to be engaging not one step before, but 2 steps before that. Now, the step prior to that is recognition of needs. So when you recognize that you've got unmet needs, you kind of go, things aren't quite working as I would like. And the stage before that, it changes over time, changes to the threat landscape, changes to the infrastructure, or whatever it is in the given solution area. So our kind of engagement model was to map to this, the InfoTrust way was to map to the buy-in cycle and actually be highly engaged with businesses as changes were occurring, advising them on how they can derive more value from their investments, how they can tweak the configuration, what's coming, how they can address new threats that are coming into the ecosystem. Customers loved it. It was,
So really a consulting.
Very consultative, but delivered by me, by Simon, and we trained our team up to do that. That was kind of core to our value prop, and that customers got on board with it, and that kind of gave us that start off in business.
And so that was the two of you nearly 10 years ago now. Yeah, fast forward, InfoTrust is done incredibly well. I think they've got 100 odd people in the business now. When you reflect on the, I guess, different milestones of growth, is there any stage that stands out as particularly memorable for either a positive or negative reason?
Probably keeping it humorous, but
just between us.
Huh?
Just between us.
Just between us.
Yeah.
I've got one that don't tell anyone.
I won't tell.
No, so look, our first employee was we started the business in April. It was about, I think it was July, August. We'd done some great business, some great deals that brought on, as I said, 100 in the first year. And it's getting with 2 people, and I think we'd hired, or we're about to hire a seller in Melbourne. So, but we were like, we haven't invoiced most of these customers. And we were straight on the hook. It's not that they wouldn't pay, we just hadn't got around to invoicing them. And so the first hire was a temp. I said, let's just get a temp in. This was at like 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. So we called, put it out on LinkedIn. I said, anyone know a temp agency? Someone comes back, call the lady. We can have someone interviewing this afternoon. So that was a turning point because it was our first hire. But the lady comes in. We interviewed her for about 20 minutes, thinking it's a temporary role. We just need you to pump out a bunch of invoices. She is now still working for us and has been, so integral to our business. Lady by the name of Frances, who you would know, just an amazing can-do kind of good soul of a person. And look, that's kind of those are the things that actually are more rewarding than any deal that you might win. Is bringing people in and building not just the business but people's careers, having fun in the process. Of course, lots of ups and downs. Looking back over the years, but definitely that's the fun part. Yeah,
and for you, what I'm picking up is your mind is often going on, this entrepreneurship sort of journey of how can I do things better and identify a problem. And I think that's a massive opportunity, but also do you get distracted with, how do you not get distracted? And because you've obviously done incredibly well with your career, InfoTrust, what you're doing now with MyCISO. How do you stay focused when you've got your mind going in a million different directions?
Sorry, what did you just say?
No, okay, remember.
I can't lie, right? Because there's people watching this that know me. But no, look, I do get distracted. I think it's weird because a lot of, there's different personality types. So I am someone that likes to keep things quite full in terms of the bucket. Happy to work on multiple things at the same time. So, someone that does get a bit excited and does get a bit distracted from time to time. But systems and processes, if I go back to my sales days, I would have the same personality, but I never, my systems, my processes made sure that at least outwardly I was extremely diligent, extremely organized. Follow up every meeting within, ideally the same day, but certainly within 24 hours, summarizing notes. I had a good system for keeping notes. So, you got to put those systems and processes first, make sure that might have meant sometimes I didn't leave the office until 8:00 because that was a promise to myself in terms of my integrity and what I would deliver, that I would get things done. I'm sending a follow-up. So I know as soon as you leave it to the next day, it's possible. The chance of it taking 3 days, it's times 10. There's a multiple versus just getting it out while it's fresh in your mind. You have your notes there. So to answer your question, yes, I do get distracted. Have weaknesses like that, but processes and systems to keep me on track is fundamental.
I've taken a lot away from that because I notice I'm the same in the sense of I will get distracted, think of something else, and regularly say, I'll do that this evening after the kids have gone to bed. I don't think I've ever done that after the kids went to bed, but I always think really positive when I've got energy. But I like your line of having an integrity of what I say I'll do and holding yourself accountable, and you are your word. So you can control that. You built InfoTrust. Talk to us a little bit about MyCISO and how that has evolved and grown out of InfoTrust.
Yeah, sure. So going back to 2015, we're a 1-year-old business. We're just starting to get some traction. And we noticed a lot of customers were calling us. It was the year of CryptoLocker, so 2014-15, which for anyone that's not familiar with that, it was one of the earlier forms of ransomware. So we had all these organizations calling us. Some of them were new customers. Some of them were prospects that we'd said, hey, we're a specialized cybersecurity in the days before that was really a thing.
Before it was cool.
Before it was cool. And they said, we need to know because we've just been talking to our buddies down the road, competitor, or with someone on the board. There's been another company like us that's just had a ransomware incident, or we've just had one. we need to make sure we're ransomware ready. So I was like, okay, well, straight away my mind goes into problem solve. So, I spent some time reverse engineering the ransomware attack chain, from usually a spoofed email, going backwards through the attack chain, through the email gateway, the web gateway, the user, endpoint backups, and ability to detect and respond to the incident in the first place. All of those things. And then we built solutions around them. But I actually knew that because we were getting so many people asking us, we built a self-assessment tool, which was an online tool that we plugged into our website and used it as a value add for our customers, or anyone visiting our website. And people used it. It was pretty basic. It presented all of our solutions as, the recommendations. But it just got me thinking, well, if we could do that for a basic assessment, I wonder if we can do a much more comprehensive assessment and a kind of consultant quality report as the output instead of just a spreadsheet. And that was the beginnings of it. About a year later, we hired a GRC practice leader at InfoTrust, someone to run the consulting and advisory practice. And during the interview process, I said, look, consulting's part of your job, right? That's the traditional part of your job. There's this other project that I need your help with, if you're the right person for that, called MyCISO. And it's a platform that will SaaSify what the consultant does. So we don't need to use consultants. It will allow the user to develop and run their cyber program from a dashboard instead of spreadsheets. It'll allow them to generate reports in seconds instead of days or weeks. And that's just the beginning. That was the idea. And that credit to the guy who said, I know exactly what you want to do. I've been thinking about doing it myself. He was quite an entrepreneurial guy. And off we went. That was in 2017. 3 years later, and I'd said to someone in one of the media, I said, we were launching in July. 3 years later, we did hit July. It was just the wrong year. So there we were, July 2020, middle of COVID, and we're in beta. The customers in beta were saying, this is fantastic. I'm like, feeling so good. This is going to be big. And my GRC practice leader comes and resigns. He's going back home to his home country, look after his dad. Disaster. Like, we've got enough on our plate. COVID, we're navigating the choppy waters of COVID, work from home, all of that fun stuff. And it was the last thing I needed, to be perfectly honest. And our advisors have been saying for years, boys, to me and Simon, you need to divide and conquer, right? This is a big opportunity with MyCISO, but you're not going to do it as a side hobby. Oh, it'll be fine. I've got this. No, just what had basically happened, and the outcome of that was I had to take over from Simon interim. And I jumped into it and I'm like, this product is horrible. I take one look at it. How do you use it? Every time I click next, popping up with an error message saying you need to do Y. So I said, look, before you go overseas, can you come back and explain to me how this thing works? He comes in 3 hours later. I've got a whiteboard the size of the wall, and there's arrows everywhere. And you've got this data object relates to that, and risks, relate to controls. And I had no idea how complicated this thing was going to get. And that wasn't the brief. The brief was about simplifying cybersecurity, right, for the IT manager, yes, the CISO, but make it more accessible to all. And I said, thank you for coming back. Really appreciate your time. And I realized we were never going to launch that product. So over the next couple of months, I changed the hiring strategy from a GRC leader to a CX-focused product owner. So customer experience. And I found Phil. Phil had worked in big finance companies, banking, large tier 1 banks, creating apps like mortgage application forms, comparison websites, that kind of thing. Now, those tools have to be seamless and simple on the front end, but there's massive complexity on the back end. So we took that approach to MyCISO. And initially he said, we can rebuild it. I can work with it. 6 months later, loads of wasted effort, we scrapped it and we started again. So that's getting on for 4 years worth of development. By 2020, mid-2021, we scrapped it completely and started again. It's actually more than 4 years. But within 3 months, and we tripled our development resources, and I'd stepped out of InfoTrust and working full-time in MyCISO from the start of 2021, we'd caught up and we were miles ahead of where we were 6 months prior. So that was kind of really the conviction that we had to have to be successful.
And when I appreciate you're saying time, you came in and it was focused and you accelerated, and that absolutely makes sense. What were the types of activities that you were doing that allowed you to accelerate the development?
Yeah, so first of all, finding the right team.
Yeah.
That both software development and product managers, laying the foundations to scale the business. So I was heavily involved I saw my role not as, not as the kind of determinant of the features and functions, but more about being the customer advocate. Obviously I know security well. I've been in this industry for a long time, but I'm not a GRC consultant. I would never claim to be. So that my role was sanitizing it to make sure that we didn't make the same mistake again, keeping it simple. If it made sense to me, it made sense to my target market, was my approach. And that was primarily, there was a lot of time spent designing the software, which, Phil and I worked on together. And then the other side was building the back end of the business, which I'd done over many years at InfoTrust. But, this time I didn't have many years. So we the sales, all the systems and billing and all of that sort of stuff that we kind of went, well, okay, how do we want to take this to market when we're ready to launch? So I spent a lot of my time on that side of things initially. Yeah. And also, I was out presenting wireframes, right? And, getting customers basically excited for 6 months before we launched. I was sometimes doing 7 meetings a day. It was intense because there was no one else. It was just Phil and I, and obviously a few others, but yeah.
That's awesome stories. And again, from the outside, yeah, even I, and I've got to know you over the years, I didn't realize that there was that much heartache and pain that you went through to get there, and having the resilience to actually, and the resilience, but also the wisdom to chop it and start all over again as well. And if we, let's fast forward a couple of years, and you're now building out your go-to-market team. There seems to be traction, momentum, product market fit seems to be there. There's the referrals and the case studies that you're getting are just phenomenal. So congratulations on transforming it. What wasn't a product a couple of years ago has now got product market fit. When you're looking at your go-to-market team, are there differences in the sorts of people that you want in your software business than, say, in the services business? And what are the sort of characteristics and traits that you're looking for?
No, not fundamentally different, right? It boils down to, if we're talking about technical capabilities, the core capabilities you would need for, risk management and, the sort of GRC, from a sales perspective, broadly the same. But at the same time, if I compare InfoTrust to MyCISO, the profile, if I was going to say is slightly different, would be we're the experts at what we do. Right? We only have a series of products, but we're one vendor. Whereas an InfoTrust or an MSSP salesperson is going to need to know a little about many solutions, and customers enjoy working with MSSPs because of that, because that account manager will have a broad knowledge of different technologies and solutions. So, our team now, we're building out the go-to-market. We've recently hired a senior marketing manager who's been fantastic. The sales team, we have about 6 in the sales team now. They're all specialists at what they do. A big part of their role is to know the product inside out, right? So that they can speak to new prospects, demo the platform themselves, and where needed, bringing a technical resource from a pre-sales or service perspective. But generally, it kind of starts and ends with the salesperson. So they need to know. They need to be really competent at presenting the platform, demoing. A little bit more technical than perhaps some sellers in some vendors, where they would have an SE with them at all times.
And from a characteristics perspective, the sort of DNA that you're looking for in your team, what does your slam dunk fit in terms of a rep? Okay,
so I always say there's 5 core traits that I look for. I've already mentioned activity. It's not sexy, right, as a sales trait, but it's fundamental. And so we look for activity, and not just I can do it or I will do it, but I enjoy it. I get up kind of to and charge at the day rather than crawl into the day. So that's number 1. Number 2, we spoke about organization, being highly organized. That's important from a salesperson perspective, because that helps you give the customer a good experience, do what you say you're going to do. If you're organized, you write things down, you get things done. Number 3, and this isn't in particular order, by the way, but rapport. I did a poll on the 4 attributes, because LinkedIn only allows you to choose 4 options, but I omitted activity. And everyone said rapport was the number 1, like by a country mile. But rapport is an important one. I think the reason why a lot of customers chose that is because they like people they like, right? But the reason they like them is probably that they're good at what they do and they follow up on time, things like that. But rapport is another one. So being able to go into a room and strike up a conversation easily, maintain that relationship. The other 2, so product knowledge. Now, I don't just call this my product. I mean all products in that area. So knowing the competition, knowing the market, being knowledgeable, someone that does enjoy reading the subject matter of your company, whether it be, in our case, frameworks is kind of the DNA that underpins our business. And knowing the difference between NIST and Essential 8, that's a fairly basic level of understanding. You would know that. So product knowledge is key. And then last but not least is sales acumen. Now, this was ranked the lowest of importance, admittedly, because a lot of customers had answered the poll. They don't want to be sales acumened.
They don't want to be sold to.
They don't want to be sold to.
They want to buy.
But what they don't necessarily realize is someone with strong sales acumen delivers them a better experience because they've asked the right questions to deliver the right product.
What does sales acumen mean?
Yeah, so sales acumen is, for example, there's a number of factors to it. Discovery, right? Number 1, I mentioned spin selling. Foundational for me as a 22-year-old seller, learning about not just asking what do you need, but asking about problems, uncovering those problems, uncovering the impact of those problems, and the implication that it has on the business, on the person, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one aspect to it. Another is handling the negotiation, because often in a sale you're going to get to a certain point, the customer can't move ahead. That you need to be able to have a non-awkward conversation about how do we navigate a path forward that's a win for both of us. And there's many other aspects to it. So obviously, just reading buying signals and things like that in sales is important. Identifying where there could be objections. You can usually tell. You kind of develop an intuition in sales when you're speaking to someone and you don't feel that they're completely comfortable with the information you provided, to knowing when to flesh out objections and then how to handle those objections to satisfaction as well. So there's a whole bunch to sales acumen. It's a life kind of journey in terms of skilling up and, sharpening your skills. But to answer your question, what do I look for? Everyone's different. I'm not going to look for a 10 out of 10 in every category. For me, it's looking at what could work in our business, in the role, for where we're at. For example, if I'm hiring account managers, I want someone that's definitely got strong rapport, relationship management. Perhaps the sort of outbound kind of activity-based attribute is less important.
That was incredibly valuable. I loved hearing your story. It's been amazing to look at the frameworks that you've applied throughout your life, to look at the discipline that you've had, and also to take away so many actionable tips as well. If anyone listening does want to learn a little bit more about MyCISO or InfoTrust, or even just connect with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So come and find me on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect. We share a lot of updates via that channel. Check out our website as well, myciso.co, myciso.co. And we'd love to connect with anyone in the industry, anyone wanting to look at the platform, reach out and we can arrange a demo for you. Definitely.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dane.
No problem. Thanks, James.